Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show and this special AM episode. We are just days away from the election and we have big plans for you when we get to Tuesday. We're going to be live on SiriusXM Triumph Channel 111, as well as live on youtube.com/Megyn Kelly beginning at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It will be an incredible night. And we will have your favorites joining me right here in the studio and from all over the country. We've got Vivek Ramaswamy, Ben Shapiro, so many more. So go and subscribe on YouTube right now. Looking forward to spending that evening with all of you. Okay, earlier this week, there was this bizarre exchange on CNN that caught our attention. We wanted to take a dive into it. There was a CNN panel that descended into chaos, I think it's fair to say, after Mehdi Hasan, the former MSNBC host, who was too leftist even for MSNBC on the Israel-Gaza conflict, was on the panel and criticized Trump and the speakers at the Madison Square Garden rally before calling the former president and his supporters Nazis. No problem. Just another day on CNN. Then another panelist, conservative Ryan Girdusky, responded. And the response subsequently has gotten him banned from the network. I mean, multiple people are coming out and just attacking him now. And there's obviously a clear double standard at play with CNN that we're going to get into in this exclusive interview with the man at the center of the controversy, and that is Ryan Girdusky. He's a Republican strategist and the founder of the 1776 Project. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. Well, you know how much my family and I love our dogs. Yes, even Strudwick. We love them, and I can't even imagine life without them. But look, some dogs do not have it so great. And that's why I'm so glad to tell you about Delta Rescue, the largest no-kill, care-for-life animal sanctuary in the world. These guys have rescued thousands of dogs, plus cats and horses too. They provide all the animals with shelter, safety, and most of all, love. And they've been doing it now for more than 45 years. Delta Rescue relies solely on contributions to stay open, and giving can bring tax benefits to you. Speak with your estate planner about how you can grow your estate while helping animals in need. And check out the estate planning tab on their website to learn more. We love our Thunder and Strudwick, but would like other dogs who need love to find it too. Visit deltarescue.org today to learn more. That's deltarescue.org. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that was an interesting moment. I'll just play it for the audience, and then we'll get your reaction to it. The audience knows we're not huge fans of Mehdi Hasan here at the MK Show, but we're going to watch this with an open mind. Here it goes.
I mean, I'm glad you played that clip, because all day long, the Trump campaign have been saying, it's a comedian, it's a comedian, it's a comedian. It wasn't just a comedian. Park the comedian and what he said, and you still have Rudy Giuliani, you still have his childhood friend, you still have his donor saying the pimp handlers.
That's right.
Just one of those people 10 years ago would have ended a Republican campaign. You didn't even get through all the clips. There was still Tucker Carlson doing replacement, Don Jr. did replacement, and then Trump himself turned up and talked about invading and occupying our country, which is the language of the far right. He talked about enemy of the people, which is Joseph Goebbels. He talked about enemy of the enemy within, which is literally Hitler. I mean, these are my problem is, I get it. Nobody wants to be called Nazis. It's very inflammatory. But if you don't want to be called Nazis, stop doing.
You're called an anti-Semite. You've been called an anti-Semite more than anyone else at this table.
Yeah.
And people will sit there and no, by me. I never called you an anti-Semite. Okay. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying
I'm a supporter of the Palestinians, so I'm used to it.
Yeah, I hope your beeper doesn't go off. The thing is that
you just say I should die?
You should not.
No,
did you just say I should be killed?
No, I did not say that. No, I did not say that.
Hold on.
Did your guest just say I should be killed on live TV?
I said I hope
Guys,
you don't.
let me just stop.
You said you hope my beeper doesn't go off.
Because you said I'm a big supporter
of the Palestinians.
Hamas.
Guys, let me stop.
Palestinians.
Are you?
Am I what? No, of course I'm not.
I
apologize.
Are you a racist, violent person inciting violence against
Ryan,
That's disgusting.
that is completely.
I apologize.
That
Good
is
job, CNN.
completely
Let's have first block say the Muslim guy should be blown up.
I apologize.
On TV.
Don't say then I apologize. You literally.
I thought you said Hamas.
You didn't think I said Hamas.
No,
I said I supported Palestinian rights.
Yes, I did.
Why? Because when you hear
What's funny
Palestinian,
is Rudy Giuliani said this yesterday, so you're a great guest to be here to defend Rudy Giuliani.
Give me
I wasn't going to entertain nonsense today, and so at this point,
this is what we're in
I
now.
can't
This
do
is America in 2024.
Here's what I will say.
Forget the
Here's what
racism.
That's right.
It's I should
That's
die.
Right.
That I should die. Okay, so what happened there, Ryan?
Okay, so let's just backtrack right before that happened. So I had been on the show. This is my fourth time, technically 3 times in one quarter because I didn't last more than a segment. The producers had changed the entire script or most of the script right before the show. And I was really irritated because rather than doing a segment on foreign policy and on inflation, we were doing multiple segments on this. So I went in very irritated and in the wrong mood, truly. Before even this clip played, they played like 2.5 minutes of the Madison Square Garden speeches. And the woman to my right, Ashley Allison, who has been extremely rude to me in the past on the network, was making comments, oh, white man humor, this is white man humor, this is white man humor, repeatedly. No one said, hey, Ashley, cut it out. Then we go into the segment, and when he said Nazis, he looked directly at me and the former Congressman, Scott Taylor, who is also a Republican. He wasn't talking about just people at the rally. He was talking about us. And then, I did not really know a lot of Mehdi Hasan previous to being on the show. I've never tweeted about him. I've never talked about him. But then he said that I had called him an anti-Semite. Now, I know his history because of like the 24 hours or 48 hours beforehand that I Googled him. And he has said vicious things about a lot of people, especially Jews, especially Israel. So for him to sit there and say someone else who's got Jews in his family, who was the most pro-Israel president of our lifetime, say he is Joseph Goebbels, the hypocrisy overwhelmed me. It just literally overwhelmed me. He was not cracked down for calling us Nazis, not cracked down for accusing me of calling him an anti-Semite, which I never did. I literally never did. And it was just, I don't know, I just had enough. And I was just like, you know what, I'm making a snide joke. I don't care. At the point afterwards, Abby was like, Ryan, calm it down. I don't think you could hear over talking. So I was like, all right, I'll apologize. I'll settle everything down. I did not say I hope there was violence against him. I did not wish him death. He was completely making it up. Segment ends. He storms off. Abby was really quiet. Abby was like, is he leaving? Ashley was like, I think Ryan should leave. I texted the producers. Abby asked me to step out. I said, okay, sorry, didn't mean to get you in any trouble with any overheads. Being professional. Said that to the producer and to the talent person at CNN. Said, it was just a heat of the moment. And they said, we understand, it's just like not right for the segment. And then I left and didn't really think anything of it. And it was just then blew up extremely, literally. No pun intended. But it just went crazy. And they said, I'm banned from the network. This is a network. Now, I'm very grateful that CNN had me on as many times as they did in the month that I was on. But this is a network that has people on constantly who say horrendous things about Republicans, horrendous things about Trump supporters, horrendous things about Trump himself. Never disciplined. And it was the immense double standards that no conservative can really live by unless they are a self-hating conservative who's going to sit there and tell them all the time why I hate. Unless you're Adam Kinzinger, you can't survive in that environment. So I kind of always knew that my time there was ending. I actually thought I would be kicked off the show at the last segment because it was a segment with Brian Stelter on accuracy in the media, and I was just going to sit there and tell Brian on air, you need to apologize for lying repeatedly on this network about Russiagate, about COVID, about Stormy Daniels' lawyer that you had on, I was going to sit there and have a moment and say, no, you're being lied to on this network constantly because they care about a narrative. And I was like, this will be my last episode, but I'm only in till the election. So go big or go home. They're never going to have that. Well,
that never happened. I thought you were referring to the one where you challenged them about the Ferguson effect and that no one knew what the hell that was.
A week
did you have the thing with Brian Stelter?
No, I was kicked off before the show, before I could have that moment. But that was my planned exit on the show. I know.
That would have been better.
I know. And I literally, it was just a snide remark that I said. But that was my third.
Okay, but wait, I want to go through it though, because I do want to go through it. Because I do understand CNN has very high standards and they don't allow incendiary rhetoric on their show. So we tried to look through the CNN annals just to find if there were any examples. I mean, it was very, very hard. I'll show you the paltry examples we came up with in SOP 54.
As a black lesbian who Donald Trump doesn't believe has genes as good as his, is he going to attempt to exterminate me
why do you
when
believe
he gets
that,
elected? Because he's damn near said it. That's why, David. That's why.
Because he's,
okay, and I'm not
has he
going to
said
be
that?
lectured by some white man who has no idea what he's talking about.
We have to stop demonizing people and realize the biggest terror threat in this country is white men, and we have to start doing something about them. There is no white guy ban.
Trump is as destructive a person in this century as Hitler, Stalin, and Mao were in the last century. He may be responsible for many more million deaths than they were.
Osama bin Laden was a
terrorist
who committed a horrific act against American people and against our republic. And I believe that Donald Trump is a terrorist who committed horrific acts.
You voted for Trump. You voted for the person who the Klan supported. You voted for the person who Nazis support.
Boomer Rube demo that backs Donald Trump, that wants to think that Donald Trump's a smart one, and y'all elitists are dumb.
I don't know, Ryan. I feel like there might have been a double standard.
Yeah, and none of that, those things got covered in the New York Times and the Washington Post. Kamala Harris's team sent out memos about my appearance with my comment because I had formerly worked for Senator J.D. Vance when his campaign in 2022. The amount of negative coverage I got was so overwhelming, so one-sided, because here's the thing that you, like, to your viewers who don't ever have experience in cable news, here's how cable news really works. You get a memo, and sometimes, as in the case of this show, sometimes as little as 30 minutes before airtime, saying this is what you're talking about. And you could have no experience in that type of conversation whatsoever. So in 30 minutes, you have to learn about the subject, think about what people are going to sit there and say, think about how you're going to control the narrative, because with liberals, you cannot let liberals control a conversation, because that you always have to control the conversation when debating liberals. You have to know all that. So when you sit there and watch cable news enough and you say, how is this person talking about this issue? It's because they got booked and just they happen to get pegged with this issue. A lot of them are not experts in the issue. They don't have a long time to talk about it. And a lot of it's for their own self-promotion. So it's a very hard and very toxic environment at times.
Yes, absolutely. And you know what? I mean, as cable news fights and rhetoric go, was this so beyond the pale compared to what we just went through, that Donald Trump is actually a terrorist, just like bin Laden, that he's Hitler, Stalin, and Mao, that white men can neither lecture their black guest. You can't speak to her if you're a white man, right? Or nor can they.
And
also they're terrorists.
Yeah. Don Lemon literally is married to a white man and said it's the biggest threat in the world. These people are all hypocrites. And so, I don't know. I could have come off a lot smarter. I could have talked about Trump's polling with minorities. I could have sat there and made a million things. I just didn't care anymore. Here's
where it went south. Okay, so here's where it went south. Mehdi Hasan leaned so far into playing the victim. He reminded me of those World Cup soccer players and their drama, pretending that they're hurt so that they can get a red card or whatever on somebody else. It was over the top. He deserves an Academy Award for did you just say you want me dead? You just said you want me to be killed? What is it's obviously the beeper thing is a reference to what Israel did to Hamas supporters and members of Hamas, where they blew up their beepers and in some cases blew up the men holding the beepers. And you were saying, if you support the Palestinians, you later said you thought he said Hamas, maybe he has a beeper. That's the comment. But how do we get from that to, I hope you die? I want you to be blown up tomorrow. That was him trying to cause trouble for you.
And notice he didn't say, are you saying I'm a terrorist? His implication is, therefore, I am a terrorist. So it just is a natural read to sit there and say what he's saying. He could have actually had a bigger thing about it, and Ashley Allison would not let it even die down, even despite Abby saying, okay, let's bring it down, because she has to get control of the show. It was, and I apologized in the moment to try to bring temperatures down because Abby was asking me to stop and bringing everything calmer. I did hear Hamas in the heat of the moment because I was getting so irritated after he called me a Nazi and saying that I accused him of anti-Semitism when I literally never heard the guy 48 hours beforehand, or I had no history. And this is a guy, by the way, Megyn, as you said, he was off of MSNBC in part because of his rhetoric. I don't know if this is low ratings or his rhetoric, but the rhetoric was very, very toxic. And he has said things.
Well, we have some of that. Well, stand by.
Oh,
by the way, I just want to correct myself. It wasn't Hamas it was Hezbollah with the beepers. But here's a little bit of Mehdi Hasan over on MSNBC.
Is it fair to describe the modern GOP as neo-fascist or proto-fascist? Florida's gone from don't say gay to don't say black. Now he's graduated from whitewashing black history to simply erasing it. This is what the Republican Party is now. It exists to play up fears and push ideas of right-wing victimhood. America's far left wants to give us free healthcare and free childcare. America's far right wants to give us white supremacy and no democracy. Palestinians live under a regime of apartheid. If the election deniers on the right win in 2022 in November next month, to me, democracy looks like it's over in America. Fascism is here to stay. Woke is often used by conservatives as a way to complain about black people and black activism. Israel is the occupier of the West Bank and Gaza. After 9/11 and the launch of a so-called global war on terror, xenophobia and specifically Islamophobia became rampant here in the US. We had to be protected from the dangerous brown hordes at our borders.
That's just a small sampling. But I mean, if you poured over Mehdi Hasan's Israel commentary, you would not emerge confused about how much he loathes the state of Israel. And it's not just that he's a Palestinian supporter. I mean, I listen to John Podhoretz commentary all the time. He would tell you openly, this guy's an anti-Semite, and it's very clear from his, he certainly has called him that, I think. I'm trying to remember specifically.
Yeah, Ben Shapiro did.
There are many people who believe that about Mehdi Hasan. I mean, he's been extremely biased against Israel. That'll pass just fine on CNN, but what you said caused an absolute meltdown. So why do you think that is? Why?
Because, I told people at CNN I told the talent team at CNN when I first was asked to come onto the network that I am not a Republican who apologizes for being a Republican. I'm not a white man who apologizes for being a white man. I don't care. Like, I'm not here for your narrative. And the talent team said that's okay. And my first show I did with Van Jones and went great, and I had a good viral moment out of it talking about polling. And then the second one was about, as you said, mentioned before, the Ferguson Effect. And when I talked about crime, they all looked at me like, how could you possibly be saying this? And it was, I was going against the narrative. And actually in the first segment, in the first show I ever did with Van Jones said, my party believed in a lot of crazy things back in 2020. And I said, yeah, it's called Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter has a lot of crazy things that they believed in. And at that moment, it was the first show I ever did. And Abby was like, wait, what? And I remember like Abby's look to me. We didn't go into it, but I was not going to be pushed around. And I think when I did the Ferguson Effect comment, and it really was a big story, and Fox covered it and other people covered it because Abby said I was making the term up, that I had made the entire thing up.
Abby Phillip, the anchor. Let me show it, Ryan. We actually have that clip. Stand by, and I'll let you take it on the back end. Here it is.
In the context of riots, he was saying, let's just bring the military into it to deal with American citizens. I mean, that happened yesterday.
Right, but the post-George Floyd riots resulted in an excess of over 15,000 black male deaths in this country. How?
Yeah.
The surge of violent crime, it was like Ferguson, the Ferguson Effect and the Floyd Effect.
Respectfully, you got to explain to me how George Floyd's death.
Yeah.
Because I need causation here.
Yes,
you really are
what happened.
Brian, we got to stop you there because you're literally making a connection out of your own conjecture.
No,
you cannot.
It's a real thing.
That.
Look up the Ferguson Effect. Look up the Floyd Effect.
You cannot say that what happened during that time period is to blame for the deaths of other black men due to violence or what have you.
100% happened.
But that literally, and my point to you is that makes absolutely no sense.
In terms of connection, I will read it, and then I will fact check the sources that actually wrote the thing.
It won't take long to fact check. It's right there. I don't know about the 15,000 number, but there's zero question that many black men and black women have died in these cities as police pulled back.
Yeah, so if you look at the excess deaths from where our starting number was in 2013 to 2022 or 2023, whatever the last number was, it's well over 10,000. And if you add car accident deaths, because there was a decrease in cops pulling over cars with black drivers in them that led to an excess of car accident deaths, you would get to the 15,000 number. Abby wrote the story on the Ferguson Effect for the Washington Post 10 years ago.
Oh, that's amazing.
There is no way she didn't know what it was. There's absolutely no way. CNN covered it. CNN covered the Ferguson Effect. And them saying it doesn't exist. And I'm sorry, but Bakari Sellers, who was the gentleman arguing with me, he is a professional race hustler. There's no way he didn't hear about it. And other ones sat there and said, yeah, it's real, but it's not true, which is fine. You can argue the merits. To say it's not, I'm making it up on the spot. Like I would just automatically just think of all these words and throw them together and these accusations. After that show, I was like, I'm not going to be on this network much longer. Like there's no way.
Yeah, you were on a thin reed. Now it's all coming together, Ryan. You were on a very thin reed. So there's no tolerance for you. So, okay, so the segment ends like in the middle of the thing, and then they pull you aside and they kick you out. And then CNN issues a statement after the fact that reads as follows. There's zero room for racism or bigotry at CNN or on our air, I mean, unless it's against white men, in which case it's fine because we just gave them all some of the examples, Ryan, and we hear that this woman sitting next to you keeps calling it white man humor. What does the race have to do with? Okay, whatever. Fine. We aim to foster thoughtful conversations and debate, including between people who profoundly disagree with each other, in order to explore important issues and promote mutual understanding. But we will not allow guests to be demeaned or for the line of civility to be crossed. Ryan will not be welcome back at our network. We are too highbrow for the likes of Ryan. That's what they tried to say. And then Abby Phillips, who is honestly, like I was open-minded to her when she first got her show. I watched a little bit here and there. She is a wolf in sheep's clothing. She's got like this sort of sweet way of sounding, and she's got this calm demeanor, and she is as leftist as Nicole Wallace. I mean, she is committed to Kamala Harris. I've watched it enough to know. Here's what she does. She goes out on the air Monday night as you're, twisting on the vine, and says this.
I want to just address what happened in the last segment. And first, I want to apologize to Mehdi Hasan for what was said at this table. It was completely unacceptable. When we get this discussion started, you'll see that Ryan is not at the table. There is a line that was crossed there, and it's not acceptable to me. It's not acceptable to us at this network. We want discussion. We want people who disagree with each other to talk to each other. But when you cross the line of a complete lack of civility, that is not going to happen here on this show.
The line of civility does not include a black woman saying that Donald Trump is going to exterminate me or refusing to be lectured to by a white man, because white men don't have the right to speak to black women on CNN in the way we saw in that clip. This is such an absurd theater. Like I barely have tolerance for it, just to watch them cloak themselves in this holier than thou act as though this is CNN. How dare you come and pollute their airwaves? But this is what they've chosen to do. And then I'll just give you one more. Abby Phillip then goes out and wants to reassure everybody that Mehdi Hasan had also left the set, but not because he'd been thrown off, because he's allowed to say whatever he wants. Here she is.
As you may have seen, Ryan was asked to leave the show, and we have put out a statement saying that he's not welcome back on our air. There is a line here on this program, and it was crossed. But I want to be clear as well that we did not ask Mehdi to not come back. In fact, we really wanted him to come back and finish the show. We had a lot to talk to him about. And we really hope that he'll join us again soon. But for those of you who are wondering why he did not come back, I just want to be super clear that that was not in any way because we didn't want him back.
So he's fine. He's fine. He can act like you called for him to be assassinated, which is not at all what you did. But you're gone forever. It's the thing.
Truthfully, I mean, Abby has always been nice to me off air. always on air, she always cut me off and fought with me and said things I said weren't true. But off air, she was very pleasant. So I have nothing personal against her whatsoever. I have
nothing personal against her. I just think professionally,
I'm
she's
just
a hack.
making it. Well, yeah, because so that Ferguson episode, she asked Bakari off commercial break was like, it's not even gonna be close. We're going to know on election night, she's going to win. She's going to be in DC. And Abby said off air, like, she's like, I got to be in DC then when she wins. I got to be there for the first Black female president. And it was, there's no if, ands, or buts that who she's rooting for. I get it. Like, whatever. That's fine. That's the game. And also, I'm not on CNN anymore. I will live. I will carry on. It will not be the worst thing that ever happened to me in this life. Trust me. There is an open bias. And every single time you would go to do this show or any of the shows on CNN that I did, both shows that I did on CNN, every angle is a negative Republican angle. Every angle, you have to sit there and be on the defensive unless you control the topic. So, I had to sit there and say something to control the topic at all times. Was it uncivil? Sure. Was it anything more uncivil than what Don Lemon said on the network or what? Or also, was it more untruthful than what Brian Stelter has said on that network? I mean, or anybody else? There's so much vitriol. And this is how much people have watered down the term Nazism. To the point where, Mehdi sat there and said that Trump was using the words of Joseph Goebbels. I know. And that was what irritated me. You, who have said things, he called all non-Muslims animals. He called gay people pedophiles. He has said horrendous things in his past. And I don't care if he's apologized, whatever, that's fine. He has said horrendous things in his past. He has had much more of the vitriol closer to those people than Donald Trump has. And you're not allowed to say that. Otherwise, you're just an angry white man. I'm like, all right, whatever. Don't have me back on your show with 200,000 viewers and 89,000 in the Prime demo. I mean, it's fine. It's totally fine. I won't do it. It's okay.
Far more people will see you on the show than saw you on that appearance. Not only did they let him get away with calling Donald Trump Goebbels, but Hillary Clinton was on their air a week earlier, not even days earlier, saying this was an MSG, this thing was a Nazi rally. Here it is. Watch.
And, one other thing that you'll see next week, Caitlin, is Trump actually reenacting the Madison Square Garden rally in 1939. I write about this in my book. President Franklin Roosevelt was appalled that neo-Nazis, fascists in America were lining up to essentially pledge their support for the kind of government that they were seeing in Germany. So I don't think we can ignore it.
But they won't allow the line of civility to be crossed at CNN, Ryan. Got it? Do we understand each other?
Earlier in that segment, before I said the beeper joke, I said that people were saying everyone who attended that rally was a fascist. And Abby said that's just not true. They said it on her network. Does she not even watch CNN? It is mind-blowing the fact that everyone in that audience has to be gaslit. And every once in a while, the truth's allowed to leak out. Democrats either have a real moment or they have a smart Republican on, not for very long usually. But that does happen occasionally. But the narrative that has to be controlled, that they have to be pro-Harris, that if you have a thought that that racial equality has moved anywhere from the 1950s. If you have a thought that we could have real facts over crime or other major issues. I said in one segment in another episode how our immigration system was bringing over so many millions of Muslims over the last few decades. We will soon have a country that has more Muslims than Jews. And that will affect our policy towards Israel if we continue our current immigration system. And one of my co-panelists goes, how do you think that makes Jews feel, you saying that out loud? I was like, I don't know. I just said a fact. I don't, they could feel however they want to feel. I'm not here to sit there and tell them how to feel. I'm telling them facts that is based on real data. And if you don't like that, then you should approach your congressman about our immigration policy. But that's not for me to sit there and say, that's for me to sit there and say, here's a fact. I'm on a news channel talking about information, and interpreting in some ways, but I'm not telling an open lie.
So let me ask you this. What, if you could have a do-over on that segment, what would you do differently?
I probably would have waited till the Brian Stelter thing to go off, honestly. I would have just sat there and said, if Trump is so racist as you have screamed on this network for the last decade, why is his support with blacks, Muslims, Jews, and Hispanics at all-time high levels? Because nothing you say matters. That's what I probably would have said. Waited to the Brian Stelter thing, then called CNN fake news, and then left in blaze of glory anyway. But that's what I would have done.
Do you have any regrets about apologizing?
I did it to be civil in the moment. I mean, it wasn't like the most sincere thing in the world, I'll admit, but it wasn't, I didn't do it. I did it. And because of Abby was the host and she said, bring it down a notch. I said, okay, I'll bring it down a notch. I'll apologize. Because I'm a man. And if someone says they insult me and then they apologize 5 seconds later, I brush it off. I'm like, okay, fine.
I really don't think it was necessary. Had I been anchoring that segment and you said that, I would have recognized it as a little too far. And I would have said, all right, we're not going to be doing the beeper jokes here. And he would have been like, yeah. And you would have been like, okay, you got me. And that would have been it. We would have They blew you up, again, pardon the pun, on purpose. They saw an opportunity to humiliate you and embarrass you and act and virtue signal to their audience that they're better than you because they don't talk like that on CNN. And they took it and they made you their sacrificial lamb. It was good. As this audience knows, I'm very, very much in favor now of cancel culture because it separates people who don't belong in an organization from that organization. And almost always that inures to the benefit of the person who's been separated. So you are now liberated from this prison of words where you're allowed to say all bad things about the white guys, but not one bad thing about Mehdi Hasan in jest that he then gets to use to make himself sound like he's a persecuted man. I hope you feel okay about it, and I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more of you.
Yeah, this is not my day job. It was never my dream. I do school board elections for the 1776 Project PAC. That's my big thing. We've been doing it for 3 years now. It's super successful. I don't dream of I was never going to get a TV show. I was never going to be anything big. It was a blip in the map, and I'm back to school board elections now.
Well, I enjoyed your stint personally, so we'll miss you here at the Megyn Kelly Show, but maybe we'll see you again right here.
All right, that's great. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. All right, what an interesting exchange, right? It's just the sanctimony of CNN. Please spare me. All right, coming up, I'm going to answer your questions. Don't go away. This show encourages honest conversations, which isn't easy in today's media environment with big tech deciding who and what gets amplified. Well, there's a news platform that prioritizes free speech and transparency without controlling the narrative. Ground News. Ground News is an app and website that aggregates related articles from around the world, highlighting each source's political bias and corporate influence. Here's an example. Recently, CBS News told their staff not to refer to Jerusalem as being in Israel. And guess who didn't cover this? Left-leaning media. On Ground News, you can see more than 90% of the coverage is coming from right-leaning sources. Ground News has an entire blind spot feed with stories like this that are receiving lopsided coverage. It reveals how media narratives are shaping the conversation, and they're offering our viewers 40% off their Vantage plan, which gives you unlimited access to their website and app. They are independent and supported by subscribers, not corporate interests. Check them out at groundnews.com/Megyn. That's ground, GROUND, news.com/Megyn to take back control of the news you consume. Now it's time for Asked and Answered, where I answer some of the questions that you guys send us via email. Keep them coming at Megyn. You can email me at MEGYN at MegynKelly.com. Here to bring this week's latest, my executive producer, Steve Krakauer. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Megyn. How's it going? All right. We've got our first question from Sam, who is a Democrat viewer and listener of the show. He says he disagrees with some of your policy issues, but values the show to keep him informed. And his question is, do you think there's a scenario where Trump could legitimately lose next week and concede?
I think so. I think it would have to be a landslide. I think it would just have to be indisputable, where she just crushed him. And then I think even Trump, he'll complain and he'll say it was stolen and he'll say it was unfair and the media and all those things. But I don't think he'll continue with the behavior we saw last time. Now, I will say, he wouldn't say in advance of 2020 that he would concede if he lost. And I remember doing a hit with somebody saying, he's not going to do that. Like, he will concede. And he did ultimately leave office. I don't know if he ever really conceded. But I underestimated just how committed he was to his threats in 2020. I think it will be a little easier this time if he loses, though, because he's not in office. You know, it's not like being fired and forced to leave the White House, which has an extra element of, you know, just failure to it and not disgrace, but, you know, embarrassment, which Trump does not handle well, as we know. So I think if he loses in a landslide, he will concede, but anything short of that, and buckle up.
That's right. Yeah. By the way, people forget, you know, he left, as is the tradition, he left a very nice note for Biden, and it's remained private, but he left that note, the good luck in your term that Biden said was a very nice note. So he did walk away from the White House.
He did. He didn't go to the inauguration, which we didn't like, because we like to see our outgoing president show up at the new president's inauguration and show that America matters more than anything. Like, we're classy, we're Americans first, and we don't let these petty political grievances spoil these moments of pageantry in our country. That didn't happen, which I think many people did not like. And, you know, we've never seen somebody contest the peaceful transfer of power quite the way that Trump did with the J6, all that stuff. That's why people are holding it against him, right? But ultimately, he was not forced out of office, and the system held. The system did hold. The courts did what they did. He's still angry about it. But Trump did leave office, and we had 4 years of Joe Biden, and we all saw how that worked out. Go ahead, Steve.
That's right. All right. This next one is from Tiffany. She says she appreciates the show, especially how you speak your mind with, quote, no fear. Her question is, what has been the most influential factor in building your confidence?
Well, okay, I have two thoughts on it, Stephanie. Number one, I do my homework. And so if you really, really know your subject matter, it gives you confidence to speak about it. And I always say the following to people. Like, if somebody said to you, Stephanie, explain why your hair is the color it is. You could walk them through exactly why your hair is the color it is. Well, my mom's hair looked like this, or my mom's hair looked differently than mine did, but so I dyed it, and this is the color I dye it, and I go to this guy, and he, whatever the story is. But you could speak about it confidently and really add details on it because it's something you know better than anybody. Well, just apply that knowledge base to anything, to the news, to Trump, to Kamala, to policy, to Medicare. It could be anything. And as long as you really know the subject matter, you can speak about it confidently. So it's really, the number one thing is homework. And then the second thing is, to the extent I have any sort of natural confidence, it is very much due to my parents, who never gave me any false praise. Never. One could make the case they were slightly too brutally honest, but it had its gifts, right? It gave me a very good sense of self-awareness. And I don't think I'm good at things that I'm not good at. And I don't really think I'm bad at things that I am good at, right? Like, I think I have a really good read on what my talents or weaknesses are, which does help one's confidence. Because it's like you're not constantly swinging and missing. You're not constantly getting different feedback from the world than what's in your head. It kind of matches up, which gives you more confidence to take another risk if your instincts are telling you to take a risk, and so on. I really do think that faint praise is a deep problem. We try not to do it with our kids. I think I'm a little sweeter than my mom, who I love. But that kind of worries me too, because her system worked very well in this way. So anyway, that's my thought on it, Stephanie.
Yeah, self-awareness, so huge. Well, that kind of dovetails with the next one here. This is from Bree, who says she's so impressed with your ability to stand resolute in your opinions. She wants to know if you believe your strong principles and moral centeredness are more of a result of innate nature or early nurturing.
I think that one is nature, not nurture. I was always sort of like an outgoing person when I was young, but I wasn't running around like having to tell everybody my opinions on things or having to dominate the discussion. And even in my personal life right now, I would definitely say I'm more of a beta on a personal basis. If I go out to dinner, I don't have to dominate the conversation. I'm thrilled, actually, to let somebody else run herd at the dinner table. and just take in the show. In fact, I'm attracted to people with big personalities where they're the ones who are on and sort of the stars. But I think to the extent you're having that impression about me, I think it's just because I'm steeped in the news and in these subjects, so I feel comfortable talking about them. And if somebody wants to hear from me on them, I'm happy to speak, right? Like, I do know my facts, back to the earlier question, and I'm happy to walk somebody down the lane. Where I get like more assertive and more like dominant is when I hear a bunch of nonsense being spewed in my presence. And I will tell you, Bree, I try to hold my tongue for as long as I can. And then if the person keeps pushing me, eventually I'm going to have to let them have it. It doesn't happen often, but there was this one crazy dinner that we had years ago, and the person who was at the other end of the table doing this was the skier Bodie Miller, and he was saying all sorts of stuff about cops and black men, and it wound up in one of the most epic social nights of our life, but it was because of that. While normally I would not attack Bodie Miller, who I really admire and think his accomplishments are just second to none, he was out of his lane and he was saying a bunch of nonsense. So that's when I felt compelled to speak up, Bree. I'm sure you're not surprised.
I'm sure she's not. All right. Well, that was great. Keep them coming. The next time we do this will be after the election, or at least after Election Day.
Oh my gosh. I think we're going to have a few things to talk about. I'm predicting. Yeah. I can see in the future, and I predict we'll have plenty to discuss the next time we do one of these extras.
That's right. Absolutely. See you then.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for writing in. It's Megyn at MegynKelly.com. And thanks to Steve as well. We're back later today. See you then.